Hello and welcome to the Kim Iversen Show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We do have a wonderful show for you today. Many of you have already emailed saying you're looking forward to this one. Whitney Webb is joining us. She's always brilliant. She always brings a wealth of information. And she, I am sure, is going to do that again for us today here on the show. We're going to be talking about Epstein. She's done a huge amount of research on Epstein. We're going to talk about Epstein and Trump, Epstein and Clinton's. We'll get into all of that, why the files aren't being released and whatnot. Also, we're going to be asking Whitney about the accusations against her that she has stolen research. Recently, accusations were made against her on Tucker Carlson's show when Daryl Cooper appeared, and he seemed to imply that Whitney Webb had stolen the research from Ryan Dawson. Ryan is also somebody who's been on this show, like Ryan a lot. He's also very smart. But there's a bit of a beef there. We're going to ask Whitney about that, have her talk about that as well today on the show. So yeah, that and more is coming up here on the Kim Iversen Show. For as long as we've walked the earth, humans have searched for the fountain of youth, something to slow down aging and give us that energetic feeling again. Well, the good news is science is now closer than ever. And I believe one of the biggest breakthroughs in aging science is Qualia senolytic, and here's why. Qualia senolytic targets what are called senescent cells, which are also known as zombie cells. And senescent cells are cells that have stopped dividing, but they're still alive and they're present in your body. And they can accumulate over time, and they're known to contribute to age-related diseases and tissue damage. So you don't want them hanging around. Well, the good news is there's a way to get rid of them. Qualia senolytic helps your body naturally clear them out using 9 plant-based vegan compounds. And the best part is you only take them 2 days a month. That's it. That to me is absolutely the best part. 2 days a month. Maybe you do it at the beginning of the month or the middle or the end, but just set your calendar and twice a month, take a dose that will help clear those zombie cells out. So experience the feeling of being younger, of feeling younger, experience the science of it. Go to qualialife.com/Kim for up to 50% off your purchase and use code Kim for an additional 15% off. That is QUALIA life.com/Kim. Well, joining us now is somebody who I don't think needs much introduction because many of you love her. You already know her. Whitney Webb is joining us today. She was a staff writer for Mint Press News. She's now a contributing editor for Unlimited Hangout and the author of One Nation Under Blackmail. Whitney Webb, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here again.
Hey, Kim, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Okay. I mean, I think you are one of my favorites. You are brilliant. Your research is phenomenal. So let's talk about the latest scandal that involves you before we get into the scandals that involve Epstein and Trump and Clinton's and PayPal Mafia. Maybe we'll get into that. But recently, Tucker Carlson had Daryl Cooper on his show, and Daryl Cooper was talking about Epstein. And during the conversation, he had mentioned that some of the research that had been done for Epstein on the Epstein saga was done by Mike Benz and by Ryan Dawson, saying that Ryan was one of the chief researchers. And he said, Ryan Dawson, one of the chief researchers, people who write books about the nation being under blackmail crib this guy's research. Clearly referring to you.
Yeah.
So... And I've heard this, and I've had Ryan on my show. I like Ryan. I'm friendly with people. And I've heard him say this also. I've heard other people, kind of make the claim that Ryan did all the research and you stole it. I don't believe that, and I'll give you reasons why I don't believe it. But I would like to hear what is your response to this accusation?
So the accusation dates back to 2019. I wrote a series about Epstein for Mint Press News. And at that point, it got a lot of attention, especially after Epstein's death in prison. And around that time, as I understand it, Ryan Dawson's YouTube channel was deleted. So he was unhappy about the lack of exposure. My series on Epstein, which included aspects of the Epstein-Israel relationship, got a lot of attention. And he admitted to some people that tried to intercede between us that I had not plagiarized anything of his at all or taken any of his research, that he was just mad that his YouTube channel had been deleted, which is understandable, but obviously I had nothing to do with that. So, eventually I challenged him on it publicly, and he doubled down, and he's been doubling down since, and has never been even able to say what facts or topics even within the Epstein scandal I supposedly took from him, nor has he provided any evidence to that in the better part of, I don't know, I guess like 6 years or so now.
Yeah.
And it's an attack on my integrity that's really unfounded. And basically, through back and forths with him and intermediaries, it comes down to basically him saying that he wrote about Epstein before me, and even if I didn't take his research, I should credit him as having written about it before me. But after all the attacks on my character and my work, and the fact that I never used his research, I'm not really, I haven't really been interested in promoting him just based on my personal experience with him. But I have acknowledged that he has covered it before me, but so have a lot of other people like Derek Brose and Nick Bryant, who I have collaborated with in the past and who I consider colleagues. And they find my work original and valuable and don't think that this is true. And I absolutely reject it, and 100%. If you read my books, only the second book is really about Epstein. The rest is a ton of research on things that preceded Epstein significantly that, to the best of my knowledge, Ryan has never talked about. And even in discussing Epstein, I'd cite all my sources. My book has thousands and thousands of footnotes. And Daryl Cooper, who made this claim, admitted on Twitter that he has never read my book. So how could he accuse me of cribbing someone's research in a book, accuse my book of being built on someone else's research when he's never even read my book? I mean, it's very unfair. Cooper, apologized and claimed that he had third parties reach out to apologize, though I was not contacted by those third parties, at least from what, the means of communication with me through my site. I didn't get anything, but it stinks, because how many people saw that claim on, Tucker Carlson, which is one of the biggest podcasts in the country, versus how many people saw Cooper say that he regretted saying it, that it was impulsive, and that he's never read my book. So it's unfortunate, to say the very least. I've tried to reach out to Ryan over the years, because I think it's really unfair, and I think it's really unfounded. And if you're going to accuse someone of something serious like that, at least put up evidence for your claim, not just I wrote about the scandal first, when lots of other people did too. And, I cover a lot of topics that Ryan has never talked about, and I've done the same quality of deep dive research on those topics, whether it's Palantir or Moderna or all sorts of other series and investigative reports that I've done over the years. So it should be very clear to people that I absolutely have the ability,
right,
to do the type of research that you can find in my books and on the Epstein scandal without needing to steal from someone else. And the fact that I can cite my sources and they're not Ryan's sources, I think makes it pretty clear. And also, Ryan's never written a book. He doesn't write, to the best of my knowledge. He's a live streamer, and has made these these maps, I guess, of connections. And a lot of my work on Epstein includes figures that are not in his so-called maps. And also, Ryan has gone around claiming that he has the Epstein client list, which is inaccurate. And he, claims it's from the victim testimony and all this stuff. But it's very different than what I would say are the web of Epstein associates that I talk about. And to the best of my knowledge, the people that believe this claim either don't like me for some other reason, or are big fans of Ryan's and have never engaged with my work at all because of what Ryan has said. And it's frankly defamatory and slanderous. And I would really appreciate that he stopped doing it when it's completely unfounded. And after 6 years, he can't even say what thing within this very broad scandal. It's a very broad research topic that I supposedly took. And, I'm still doing original reporting on aspects of the case that he's never talked about. But I think, if I don't need to be conspiratorial here, but one of the reasons I think this is being so pushed into the public now, after sort of, being discredited and simmering under the radar over past years is because Ryan has kind of made it a point to absolve Trump in some of this stuff going on right now, whereas I do not. I'm a lot more critical of Trump than Ryan tends to be. And so, as the Trump administration has struggled to manage the narrative around this stuff, I wonder if that might be a reason. But again, I don't really know. I don't really know why Cooper chose to do that. He claims to be a longtime fan of Ryan's, which is fine. And I've never engaged with Ryan's research or even watched his stuff because of this antagonism. And it's frankly an attack on my integrity and my work. But I would encourage people to go look at his stuff and decide for yourself, and look at my sources and my Epstein reporting and see if you find any validity to that. And, a lot of people that have done that have not believed this claim. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. So you think that Daryl said what he said is because he's a fan of Ryan's? Is he a friend of Ryan's? Do you know?
I mean, that's my understanding, that he has followed Ryan for a long time and is clearly, as he said himself, unfamiliar with my work.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of your strongest one of the strongest points you're making here is that if anybody reads any of your work about anything, yeah, I mean, you very clearly have the ability to do very deep research and write about it and put it all together. And there's no question about that. I mean, that's why you're one of my absolute favorites, is because you really get in there and do a phenomenal amount of research and put a web together that is like, I mean, you're just, I think, smarter than all of us. and so
Well,
to me, it's so easy to see that you clearly are doing your own stuff. You don't need to steal from anybody.
I mean, I just don't understand the accusation on that level, because again, like you said, I've just made it so apparent through my work over the course of several years now that I always cite my sources.
Yeah.
And the only people that believe this are people that don't follow my work. I mean, that's pretty much, it should speak for itself.
I'll tell you why.
Unfortunately, a lot of accusations, when they're made on social media or they're made in passing, people don't necessarily ask for the proof.
Right.
And then those kinds of things can propagate online, or people can say them, and it's just it stinks. I would much prefer to collaborate. I tend to view journalism as a team sport. I think it's important for people to work together to get to the truth of what's actually going on with big scandals and meta cartel networks like the Epstein scandal. And, I've also been made aware that Ryan has accused multiple other people of plagiarism on different topics without evidence. Like, it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't think that's helpful. And obviously, in my case, as I said before, I find it very defamatory.
Have you had any sort of ramifications from it?
Well, I think the biggest one is, I guess, just this claim being made on Tucker Carlson. But I mean, people have left reviews of my book on Amazon claiming the work is not mine without evidence, which obviously is untrue and sucks. And if you read the books, again, I mean, I talk about a lot of things that Ryan's never covered. And the entirety of volume 1, my book is a 2-volume book, isn't really even about Epstein. It's about the group that Epstein was a part of and the instances of sexual blackmail that precede that, and how organized crime and intelligence came together. And ultimately, it's an attempt to discredit my work, which I guess might be in vogue right now because I don't absolve one of the two political parties. I make it very clear that this is a bipartisan issue. And so, I think Ryan has been discrediting my work as a way to sort of promote himself. I don't think he's necessarily been doing it for other reasons, but I think, there might be people who would like to take advantage of that to try and push a more partisan line as it relates to the Epstein scandal right now, which is obviously of political benefit at the moment.
Right. Well, I'll tell you why I never believed this claim. And it's because when in 2019, when I first dug into the Epstein scandal, I'd really not followed it all, really knew nothing about it. And at the time, I decided to start getting into it, and I started researching. And I researched and started connecting dots with people. And I ended up with this, I ended up with what I ended up with. And then when I started talking about it on my live stream, somebody had said to me, have you read this piece from Whitney Webb? And I had actually not read your piece. It actually came out, your piece on Mint Press started coming out around the same, like literally at the exact same time I was talking about Epstein. And when I read your piece, I was like, oh, I felt vindicated actually, because it was a lot of the same. I'd come to the same like connections and was like, okay, Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine, like all of these things, right? So when I read your work, I actually thought, oh no, she's going to think I stole her work because it was the same. I mean, yours was way more detailed. You had gotten into a lot more of it than I had. Mine was more surface, but it was still the same connections and the same, ultimately it was the same path. And I didn't read anyone's work to get to that. And that is something that when I've asked Ryan about it, and even when he talks about like the Epstein client list, for example, what he says even is, look, this is all out there. Like this is all information that's out there. So, and
Yeah, it is.
And that's been my experience. This was all information that was out there. I mean, it was just, all you had to do was just look for it. I mean, it wasn't like hiding and, I didn't go into an archive and discover some paper that nobody had ever seen. I mean, the information was just out there. So, it was out there, and it was just out there for those who were interested in finding it. And I was interested in finding it. You clearly were interested in finding it. And obviously
Sure.
Ryan was interested in finding it. And other people have been interested in finding it. And when you go and you look, we all end up kind of coming to the same conclusions because there it is. So I don't, so when I saw, when the claim was made that you had stolen the work, I thought, well, how, for one, I don't honestly, and like I said, I like Ryan. I've had Ryan on the show. I don't have any beef with the guy at all, but I don't know. I honestly don't know where to find his work. I literally have no clue where to find his work. So I don't know where his Epstein research lives. I know where yours lives.
Well, my understanding is that it's paywalled. It's like in films, I've been told. But he would have a record of me buying the film and my payment information.
Right. Okay. Well, I've never seen that. I've never seen any of it. So that's why, to me, the claim was like, well, I mean, I would have to have seen, have come across your work and seen your work. I mean, yours I could read about, in Mint Press News, Unlimited Hangout, right? Your work is out there, your books, like it's all out there for any of us to consume. But so that to me, when I'd heard these, I thought there's no way, because I myself even came to the same conclusions just by doing enough research on it and caring and being interested in it. And, you've just done, you're with your research is always much more robust. But you had the same. So that's why for me, I just always thought, no, this information is just out there. I mean, it's out there. You just have to find it. That's it. So there's nothing hiding. How can you steal something that's out there? You can't really.
No, and I mean, if you're trying to research, like you said, the same scandal and you cross-reference names, I mean, you're going to come across similar sources eventually.
Yeah.
So like in the case of, when this initially came out, this accusation was initially made. It was claimed that like I couldn't have figured out what the mega group was. It's on my own. And this is a group that was co-founded by Leslie Wexner and Charles Bronfman in 1991. Sort of this group of billionaires who, as I note in my book, are all linked to, a lot of the known members were linked to organized crime, if not currently, then historically. But initially, if you look at my early Epstein series for Mint Press News, I focused a lot on the Bronfman family going back to like the 20s and 30s. And I was curious, at the time when I was writing that series, if there would be overlap between Bronfman and Leslie Wexner. So I Googled Bronfman and Wexner, and one of the first results is the Wall Street Journal article on the mega group. So eventually, if you start looking at these networks, you're going to be seeing if there's connections between various people and various names. And it's obviously you're going to overlap with people to some extent. And so I cited my source there, but the source certainly wasn't Ryan. And so again, I think this is kind of an ego-fueled thing, and it's unfortunate that Ryan hasn't gotten the exposure he feels his deserves, but that's not my fault, and I shouldn't be taking the heat for that, frankly. Well, after like 6+ years, when I've made it very clear that I'm very capable of doing research on a litany of topics. Yes. So I will also say that this initially, probably goes back before Epstein, because I'm sure Ryan will bring this up in some sort of response. I wrote a piece for Mint Press News in early 2019, I believe, about the dancing Israeli scandal around September 11th, 2001. And I had never heard of Ryan until I wrote that article, and he claimed I took his research that time also. But the source documents that I had cited as it relates to the dancing Israelis were all available on archive.org, which I linked in the piece.
Right.
And then because Ryan made a big stink about this, I actually went back into the article and added an update where I mentioned his name and added his opinion about this. And I actually made a mistake in that article. And Ryan doesn't make the mistake apparently in his research, because I had a deadline, so I didn't get to read this police report. And so I made a mistake about dating of the photos and the time that's on the photos of these Israeli citizens that seem to have foreknowledge of 9/11. And if I had used Ryan's research, I wouldn't have made that mistake. And I went out of my way to cite him. So, I mean, it just kind of stinks. And then those pictures were obtained through a FOIA request that Ryan did not make. It was another person who gave them to me to publish. I was the first to publish them, but I later found out that person gave them to me because he hated Ryan, and I wasn't aware of their beef until
Okay.
until all of that happened. But I mean, a lot of this is like unnecessary drama, and I would really just like it to stop so we can get back to research and, exposing the elites that are engaged in these crimes.
Right. And again, even with the dancing Israelis, that information's out there. And, the people, I guess, that we would steal from, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, how do you steal? I guess if you just don't do any research on your own at all, right? And you're just reading somebody's paper and you just regurgitate it, that would be theft, right? Otherwise,
well, plagiarism is like when you copy paste something, you write it in the same order. People can look up the definition of it.
Right. Plagiarism is one thing, but stealing research, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like,
it's a 1,000-page book, and it has like thousands of footnotes in it. And someone by now would be able to show that it wasn't mine, and that has never happened. And everyone that's read my book, to the best of my knowledge, does not believe this accusation. So I don't know what else to say about it. I would like to move on with my life.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. But okay, and let's move on from that topic as well. I mean, I think anybody who's watching this show, everybody loves you who's watching this show, that's for sure. I do. I have a massive amount of respect for you and your work, and I don't think you steal anybody's work. It's not within the realm of believability. If anybody's read any of your work whatsoever, it's just not within the realm of believability. So it's unfortunate that Daryl Cooper did not read your work and he made that claim. That is extremely unfortunate, because
I will happily send him my books if he would like to read them.
He would learn a lot, maybe. I mean, he's also a fantastic researcher, but I think he would maybe learn, maybe he would learn something from you, like the rest of us do whenever we try to read your work and understand it. I mean, you're just so smart that sometimes it's like, I'm like...
Well, my articles are dense, and they tend to be very detailed, because a lot of the things I write about, some people would like to dismiss them as coincidence or, not close connections. But when you show enough evidence and enough details, the bigger picture sort of comes into view. So that's why I do it that way.
You also had another criticism. I'm just remembering this. What was the other one that they were getting on your case about with Elon? No, was it something that was like, they were saying that you were seeing conspiracy when there was none. Do you remember this? Like, what was it about?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. But I mean, obviously a lot of people like to dismiss things, especially when you're writing about intelligence agencies, which I often tend to do.
Right.
That it's a conspiracy theory, because the invention of the term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist as a pejorative is, from the CIA and the Kennedy assassination era.
Right. I think it was maybe it had to do with the PayPal mafia or something. I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was like saying that, you were seeing some conspiracy that wasn't really there or something.
I mean, maybe about my reporting on Peter Thiel and Epstein and Elon Musk and Epstein, but I'm pretty sure now that's been pretty well vindicated in the past 6 months with recent reports. So
Are you a yo-yo dieter? You diet, you lose weight, but then you gain it all back plus a few extra pounds. Then later you lose it and regain it again and again. Well, that's dangerous. Studies show yo-yo dieting can increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and other health problems. Breaking free of that pattern is a main reason doctors created lean. Lean is a supplement. So this is not an injection. You don't need a prescription for it. The science behind lean is really impressive. It's got natural ingredients that target weight loss in 3 powerful ways. Lean helps maintain healthy blood sugar, it helps control appetite and cravings, and it helps burn fat by converting fat into energy. So listen, if you're tired of losing weight and gaining it back, and if you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace, Lean was created for you. And let me get you started with 20% off when you enter Kim20 at takelean.com. That's code Kim20 at takelean.com. Let's talk about Trump and Epstein and I just, you know how disheartening it is to see what's going on with the Republican Party right now, especially the people that are like trying to dismiss the Epstein files as just a Democrat thing. You know, even Trump is going out there, oh, Clinton went to the island 28 times. I never went to the island. So this is clearly like a Clinton thing. When then you watch Republicans, and you know, and I know that you don't really connect. I mean, you're always talking about, you know, the facts. I'm more conspiratorial than you for sure. And so I think all of this was 1000% at the behest of Israel and to benefit Israel. Like the whole entire thing was, whether it also benefited the CIA and American intelligence, I don't know. I think the CIA is also run by Israel at this point. I think many of us are just thinking Israel has a freaking grip on our country and we are no longer a sovereign nation. And to me, it looks really clear every time a Republican post something on social media, like we're seeing Mike Johnson right now and Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Randy Fine and, you know, all of them out there kissing the Wailing Wall and paying homage to Israel while Americans are, you know, dealing with all the things that Americans are dealing with. It's just more clear than ever, you know, as we also are aiding and abetting a genocide. It's just more clear than ever that our country is completely under the grip of the Israelis. And so it's comical to me to think that this is just a Democrat thing and not a Republican thing when I'm watching more Republicans. I mean, if anything, the Republicans are more in on it than the Democrats, because at least some Democrats are actually speaking up against Israel at this point. But which Republicans are besides Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are about to be primaried? You know, hopefully not. Hopefully the American people stand with them. But other than them, you know, it seems like every single Republican is out there kissing the Wailing Wall and basically saying, I pledge allegiance to Israel. You've got Donald Trump coming out saying you don't get disaster relief funds for hurricane relief or unless you pay homage to Israel, essentially. You can't boycott Israel. You can't be mean to Israel. Otherwise, we're not going to give Americans disaster relief. That is treason. So, you know, I think Republicans, if anything, are more on the take than, I mean, it's bipartisan for sure. No doubt about it. Clinton did visit the island many times. Clearly, there's something with that. But right now, it just looks like Republicans are full in on Israel. You know, it's MAGA here. It's not MAGA. It's MAGA. I don't know. So what do you think is going on with this?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. There are a lot of things going on right now. But I would say, you know, the thesis of my book and my work on Epstein is basically, and the reason I go so far back in time, I basically argue that organized crime, which a specific syndicate of organized crime, so the Jewish mob, the aspect of that led by Mayor Lansky, teamed up with Lucky Luciano of the Italian mafia in New York, and later he's deported, and, you know, in the Sicilian mafia in Italy. They teamed up with U.S. intelligence and also British intelligence, which were collaborating together during World War II. And basically in this alliance, which happened during something called Operation Underworld, which U.S. intelligence has since admitted happened, but they denied it for a long time. You know, after that initial alliance in World War II, it didn't end because it was justified out of wartime necessity, right? And after the war ends, they keep doing it. And so basically what happened there is that you had organized crime get in bed with intelligence, and they basically made a cartel with state protection. And This, of course, precedes the creation of the State of Israel, which is in 1948. And a lot of those Jewish mobsters that had teamed up with intelligence sent weapons and arms and other things to the Haganah and these Israeli paramilitary, or these Jewish paramilitary groups that later created the State of Israel and induced the Nakba, the mass exodus of Palestinians by force and terror, frankly, in 1948. And so, since then, a lot of those people on these networks have sort of swam in the same sea. And that's why a lot of the scandals in the past of, for U.S. intelligence, like Iran-Contra, for example, involved U.S. and Israeli intelligence working together. There's a reason why there's a monument to James Angleton, one of the first CIA counterintelligence chiefs in Tel Aviv. It's because they've been collaborating nonstop, but really I would call it a criminal organization, because the CIA and also, some of their equivalents in Israel took upon it a lot of the cartels that had previously been, or illicit markets that had previously been the business of the mob exclusively, like the drug trade or arms trafficking. And that's why, you see all of that in Iran-Contra and similar scandals in the past. And so also they engage in human trafficking, in sex trafficking, but blackmail, which was originally, born out of organized crime, but it's very useful to intelligence agencies too, because intelligence is just information that gives you an advantage. Right. So ultimately, blackmail is that too.
Let's talk about Trump and Epstein.
Sure. So Trump, his mentor, is a big focus of my book. Roy Cohn was a mob lawyer and had ties to this network that I just mentioned, pretty direct ties that I talk about in my book. And Roy Cohn was also involved in sex blackmail stuff. That a ring that allegedly blackmailed J. Edgar Hoover, among others, and prevented him from going after organized crime in the United States. And Roy Cohn was also Donald Trump's lawyer, while also, representing some of these mob bosses and other things. But aside from that, Trump in the late 80s got involved with this company called Resorts International. He became the controlling shareholder of it, I think, in 1987. And that was a pretty notorious CIA mob front company that was involved in all this really shady stuff in the Caribbean involving Mayor Lansky specifically. And Trump took a controlling stake in it for the purpose of expanding his hotel and casino holdings, specifically in Atlantic City. And during this period of time, he's hanging out on Robert Maxwell's yacht, for example, photographed with people like Steve Ross of Time Warner fame, who was linked to organized crime, Maxwell, the former Senator John Tower, who was an accessory with Robert Maxwell of the Promise Software scandal, which again was U.S.-Israeli collaboration in committing crime, basically. In addition to that, he, allegedly became close to Ghislaine in this period, and also to Epstein, reportedly frequently partying with Epstein and Tom Barrack of Colony Capital, who's in the administration now, I believe, as ambassador to Turkey or something like that. And, they were, international playboys together. And Epstein in this period Trump in this period had also become close, reportedly, to John Casablancas of Elite Model Management, who is known for his preference of quote unquote child women. And his modeling agencies have a lot of scandalous accusations about trafficking and other things to figures like Adnan Khashoggi in the 80s, who was one of Epstein's clients in the 80s as well. So a lot of these guys are swimming in kind of disturbing waters of dubious legality, to put it lightly. And then in the early 90s, Trump's Atlantic City holdings and other things dragged down his business empire, and he declares bankruptcy. And in order to be bailed out, he's bailed out by Wilbur Ross, who he later rewards for that when he's president the first time, making him Commerce Secretary. But at the time, Wilbur Ross was representing the Rothschild banking interests. In the Rothschild banking interest, specifically this Wall Street M&A arm that they opened up in the 80s, was responsible for bringing Robert Maxwell to New York. So basically, Trump as a business icon would not have existed beyond the early 1990s if it wasn't for the Rothschild banking interests. who have a lot of affiliations to people in sort of the Epstein network, and specifically Epstein's financial crimes, which include a lot of currency speculation in this, what the New York Times once called a currency speculation cabal, including people like Jamie Goldsmith, also backed by the Rothschilds, and even George Soros, whose first his quantum fund in like the late 60s was bankrolled by the French Rothschild interests. And if for anyone that's familiar, the Rothschild family has a very long and storied history with Zionism and the establishment of the state of Israel, and being a major patron of that. So, they've definitely had a lot of influence, I would think, over Trump now, since he owes them a lot. And also, the Epstein friendship, beyond that period of time, persisted and continued up until the early 2000s, when they had a falling out. And there's a lot of conflicting reports about what that falling out was about. But ultimately, it seems to have been over this real estate deal. They both were competing for the same Palm Beach mansion, and neither of them got it. But apparently, their fight over that sort of led them to end their, multi-decade friendship at that point. And Epstein, for example, claims that he introduced Trump to Melania, but of course, Trump and Melania deny that and say it was another mogul guy, sort of a protege of John Casablancas of Elite Models, named Paolo Zampoli. Who there's a lot to say on him, but I'll leave that for another time. But the ties are extensive, and maybe not as extensive or as damaging in some respects as some people would like them to be, but he's certainly not absolved of involvement. I would also say that in the case of the Black Book, which a lot of people are familiar with, it's this rather infamous book of context of Epstein. It was originally produced by Epstein's former butler or house manager in Palm Beach, named Alfredo Rodriguez. And Rodriguez was shopping it around to people suing Epstein in civil suits. And he basically circled a series of names that he said were essential to solving the crimes that Epstein was up to, and that these were, represented essentially accomplices of that crime. And so Donald Trump's name is one of the circled names, along with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jean-Luc Brunel, Leslie Wexner, and some of the names that are probably more familiar to people that have more superficially looked into this case. Also, a very close friend of Trump's is circled. His name is Flavio Briatore. He's an Italian guy, a businessman. I wrote about him recently in a pretty deep dive.
Is he the one that, did he have a baby with Heidi Klum?
Yes.
Okay. That's how I know that name.
Yes, and he introduced Naomi Campbell to Epstein. Okay. And of course, Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell were fixtures for several years at Heidi Klum's Halloween party. There's pictures, all over the internet of that. And also, Heidi Klum and Campbell, among others, were prominent Victoria's Secret models in their annually televised fashion shows, which reportedly Epstein had, a role in organizing. And there's pictures of him being in the front row with Wexner. And plenty of, documented evidence of him claiming to be a model scout or one of the top people in modeling for Victoria's Secret, and using that as a lure to, entrap women, among other things.
I mean, it just seems at this point that there's no denying that they must have something on Trump. I mean, how is this?
Well, at this point, the waters have been so muddied that there's always going to be a segment of his base that doesn't believe anything, no matter what comes out. He'll just say it's a hoax, or say that, it was planted in there by James Comey or whatever. I mean, it's hard to really, the narrative management is in full swing. But I think you can look at the available evidence, like the things that I just laid out, and I'm sure I've forgotten something. I mean, it is kind of a long timeline, and a lot of details to keep in one's head. And,
Right.
I have a 2-month-old at home, so, I'm not at 100% right now, I guess.
Well, and just also his behavior
it's
right
enough
now.
to question.
Yeah, well,
And very clearly they, the people behind Epstein and the people behind Trump, there is a considerable bit of overlap, as I laid out earlier, because Epstein at the end of the day wasn't the mastermind of whatever scheme he was running. He was working for other people. Most obviously Leslie Wexner, but arguably a lot of these other billionaires, most of which
Right.
have ties to Israel. But a lot of them also have ties to this transnational Jewish fraternal organization that sort of, models itself after Freemasonry, called B'nai B'rith. Roy Cohn was a significant part of that. His father used to run the New York branch. Edgar Bronfman and Wexner and a lot of these prominent figures in the mega group have donated to it or been on its board of overseers. And it's the organization that produced the Anti-Defamation League, or the ADL, that goes around sort of conflating criticisms of billionaires like this with anti-Semitism, and also anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, among other things. So important to point that out, I guess, because, basically, if I'm talking about in criticizing Leslie Wexner, who was, accused by the Columbus Police Department of having ties to organized crime, and I go and I report that they said that, I mean, that's not anti-Semitic. I just want to point out that this guy was a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And to conflate as Leslie Wexner with all Jews is absolutely insane. There's plenty of Jews that are very against the Epstein network. I think that's quite clear. And also, there's Jews being arrested for protesting about what Israel's doing in Gaza.
Yeah.
So, it's, frankly, pretty dishonest. But if you want to keep the heat off of the real people that were managing this, one way you would do that would be to attempt to criminalize, scrutiny of these very prominent billionaires who masquerade as philanthropists, but really they're a lot more than that.
What do you think are in these files that they won't release? It's funny because I think there's nothing in the files. I mean, I'm like, well, obviously, if this was an Israeli intelligence operation, they scrubbed them. They've got everything they want on their end. We're not getting the Israeli files. And so what files we have really probably don't have anything in them. And if that's the case, then why don't they just release them? So I just don't understand what the hang up is. I mean, what do you think it is?
It could be a lot of things. I have some ideas. So only, I think today, the past couple days, the New York Times got around to publishing pictures that were taken inside Epstein's New York townhouse the day he was arrested. And the FBI supposedly collected a lot of material, CDs and other things from that townhouse when it was raided. And we don't know what was on them. I mean, Pam Bondi is now saying it's CP, or child porn. But we don't really know that, because she said, months prior, said it was something else, and then kind of did this rapid.
And it's crazy that she's like, oh, it's filled with child porn. But now, and then the same breath says, but there's nothing to see here, no scandal, no nothing. And it's like, wait a minute, you just said that there's a bunch of child porn in there, but now we're supposed to just, nobody's going to be held accountable for this?
Yeah, well, I would keep in mind, too, that not long before Epstein was arrested, he was filmed for like 20 hours or something by one of Trump's chief political strategists of yesteryear, Steve Bannon. And Bannon was doing that to attempt to rehabilitate Epstein's image after he had been, imprisoned and gotten that sweetheart deal, the plea deal in 2007, 2008. And, if Bannon was that close to Trump, it's safe to say that to Epstein, that a lot of the people, in that network, maybe not Trump himself personally, but again, you have to look a tier up above these people. There was an interest in rehabilitating Epstein for some specific reason. I think, it gets a little too close to Trump's inner circle. Maybe it's not Trump himself in the more recent years, but, that Bannon involvement should be, pretty significant. And then also the fact that, our government is increasingly being taken over by public-private partnerships with the biggest big tech firms of Silicon Valley. And Epstein, before his arrest, was trying to rebrand as a VC guy, specifically in, Silicon Valley networks. And he has significant ties to almost every CEO of importance in the tech world. Bill Gates of Microsoft, Ghislaine Maxwell had a relationship of some type with Jeff Bezos. We know a lot more now, of course, about the Peter Thiel Epstein relationship and the Musk Epstein relationship. Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn also very close to Epstein. So why did he have so many ties to these big tech guys? I think they want to avoid scrutiny of those kind of things because they run a lot of the most significant government contractors. Peter Thiel created Palantir, which contracts for all 18 intelligence agencies, is now embedded in the IRS, has all your health data at HHS. And is a leader in the AI market, and I mean has just expanded hugely in terms of its how intertwined it's become with the U.S. government. And Musk, for example, has a lot of military contractors. Thiel funds a lot of up and coming military contractors, and also is the political benefactor of the current vice president. So this could be something not necessarily in the files about Trump. It could be about people that are, a tier above in front of the faces that are sort of rolled out to us as the faces of political power, whether that's Trump or JD Vance. Basically it's not good for the American oligarchy, which funds and manipulates both parties.
Yeah.
And I think they want to keep people looking at that. And that's why there's been this renewed focus on both sides, on Democrats and Republicans, to make this a partisan issue again. Because the way the narrative management of the Epstein scandal has been for years has been, well, if you're watching a left-leaning podcast, they're going to talk about Epstein and Trump all day long. And if you watch a right-leaning podcast, they're going to talk about Epstein and Clinton all day long.
Yeah.
And trying to keep people in these partisan divides. But really, it's a bipartisan scandal. So anytime a release of information would disabuse people of that, it doesn't benefit them to release it.
Right.
Right.
So
now what we're having instead is the House having the subpoenaing the Clintons and past officials of the Department of Justice. Because they want to make it an Epstein-Clinton issue again. And of course, there is plenty to say about the Epstein-Clinton relationship. Right. But again, a lot of it involves Israel, and they won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Instead, they'll focus on Clinton after he left office and focus on how Epstein was very involved with setting up the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton post-presidential philanthropies. Yes. But they won't focus at all, in my opinion. I would be shocked if they gave any attention to Epstein's 17 visits to the Clinton White House in the 90s. Because if they did, I think that would be very problematic again for both parties and also for Israel.
Yeah, this is what I'm noticing even about the latest Russiagate scandal with all the documents that are being dropped that implicate Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, all these people. It's like, so what? I mean, they're
not going to go to jail. I mean,
right.
his whole campaign in 2016 was lock her up. And then he got in office and was like,
right. Well, exactly.
So,
and so for them to just throw Clinton under the bus with Epstein, for example, for them to be throwing Hillary or Barack Obama under the bus for the Russiagate, none of this matters because these people are already out of office. It's easy to throw people under the bus who have no power anymore and aren't going to have any power. They're not in the positions to gain it again. They've already served their terms, right? So it's easy to just make them the fall guys and to try to get everybody to shut up about it, and it's like, okay, but we've got, like you're pointing out, an entire cabal of people that are still very much in power, who are very much connected to these scandals, and yet they're not going to go down at all. It's just we, the American people, are being treated like morons, and they're just giving us Bill Clinton. Okay, so what are we going to do with Bill Clinton?
Everyone knows Bill Clinton's a perv. It's not news. But what is news is the other stuff they were meeting about. It's not about was Clinton unfaithful to his wife Hillary. I think everyone knows that he has been that for a long time.
Right.
I think the scandals are, yes, perhaps definitely, but it should be just one of several focus points that Epstein basically helped Clinton set up the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and the Clinton Global Initiative after he left the presidency, and helped to design those philanthropies. He helped design philanthropies for people like Bill Gates too, and a lot of these other figures. He had a direct line to the people that decide who gets Nobel Prizes and stuff, and had a lot of influence in the world of quote unquote philanthropy, which really isn't that. It's influence peddling and money laundering, a lot of times disguised as philanthropy, when you're talking about these people. And Epstein was a financial criminal. And one of the reasons he got involved with intelligence networks was because he was very good at working the world of shadow banking.
Yeah.
And that's pretty clear when you look at his trajectory. He was sought after for that by the elites to a big extent. So he was structuring a lot of these philanthropic institutions and all of that for them, to help them expand their influence and power. And also Epstein was interested in eugenics, and so a lot of these Clinton Health Access Initiative, Gates Foundation's stuff, kind of arguably have some of this rebranded eugenic stuff in them, as I argued in some of my work during the COVID era. But they're not going to talk about Epstein and Clinton in the 1990s. And you can read my book if you'd like to know why. But in short, one of the main people he was meeting with at the White House was this guy named Mark Middleton. And as the Epstein scandal relatively shortly after the details of Epstein's visits to the White House were made public, I believe actually it was the Daily Mail that first sort of published some of the logs on them and revealed that he was mostly meeting with Middleton. Middleton ended up dead. He was hanging from a tree by the neck with an extension cord and had a shotgun blast to the chest. And a court sealed all the forensic evidence and photos taken at the scene so that no one can ever look at them. And it's very bizarre because that was the same year that Jean-Luc Brunel turned up dead in a prison. And of course, Epstein himself turned up dead in a prison. So why did they need to get rid of Mark Middleton? I don't think they want people asking questions about what was going on. And Mark Middleton was part of this huge scandal that was never properly investigated, that is remembered today as Chinagate. But it was really a huge scandal involving arms trafficking and technology transfer, involving the state of Israel and also our own intelligence services to undermine the U.S. military advantage by sending a bunch of U.S. Highly specialized military and technological equipment to China, and it's very scandalous. So I'll just leave it there. But at the same time, I should add this. At the same time he was meeting at the Epstein or at the Clinton White House, Epstein had basically, through Wexner, just taken control of the main Iran-Contra airline that was used to funnel drugs and weapons all over the Americas in the 1980s, and was previously outright owned by the CIA Southern Air Transport. They took it over and started moving it instead of from North America to South America and Central America, it started going from Columbus, Ohio, where Wexner is based, to Hong Kong. And what were they trafficking? Well, it's hard to know, but law enforcement people, like I think the Inspector General or someone prominent in Ohio at the time, called it the Mayor Lansky run, basically saying that it was working at the behest of, organized crime interests. So again, I think that's an untouchable aspect of the Epstein-Clinton relationship. It's very problematic for them to talk about. But you think they would love to talk about it because China and because Clinton,
right?
But they don't touch it. And it's because, again, if you want the details on what I just laid out, the details of it are in my book. You can actually read it for free on archive.org if you don't want to buy it. But it basically lays it all out. It involved the state of Israel. It involved basically the same crowd that did Iran-Contra was involved in shady stuff there. And they were undermining, basically trying to do a massive technology transfer of military technology and satellite technology. And no one was ever prosecuted for it.
Right. And that's why I don't think they would release that type of information about Clinton. They would just say, oh, he's a perv and he went to the island. So, yep, we got him. It'll just kind of stay surface. It won't go deeper. Questions won't be asked because it implements.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing with Bill Gates too. So mainstream media and the official story would like you to believe that Epstein and Gates didn't know each other until 2011, but there's evidence that they knew each other in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So, why would they pick 2011? Well, that's the year or around the time that Gates stopped having a major role at Microsoft. So you're absolving Microsoft of scrutiny and keeping it on Gates only after this, critical point.
Sure.
So there's so much narrative management about the Epstein case, and because this has become very politically uncomfortable for Trump, there's unprecedented efforts at narrative management now, and I think it's pretty telling. And I sort of alluded to this earlier when we talked about those accusations. A lot of people that are being interviewed or named as the top Epstein researchers or commentators or whatever are people that prior to this recent bubble up in the scandal have never been interviewed about Epstein.
Hmm.
So why now? And some of them are former officials in the Trump administration. Some of them are known for being extremely pro-Zionist. And some of them, are known for taking partisan slants on these issues, or have, past longstanding affiliations with entities like the Hudson Institute, which, if you're not familiar with the Hudson Institute, it's a neocon think tank that includes fellows like Nikki Haley, William Barr, and Mike Pompeo. So again, I think it's important for everyone to do their own research. But please keep in mind, please believe me when I say this is a bipartisan scandal. And really, the only way to really understand what's going on here is to look a tier above all the names that are thrown out most frequently and look at the oligarchs.
Yeah. What do you think?
That's follow the money at the
Right.
end of the day. So look at the oligarchy and what they're doing. And a lot of these people, including Epstein, were just middlemen for oligarchs.
Yeah. Speaking of the narrative management, it is really bizarre. For example, Steve Bannon, who was trying to rehabilitate Epstein's reputation, but now what is he saying? He's out there basically saying, "Oh, Trump's in bed with Israel." He's calling out Trump and his Israel ties, and calling for the release of the files and whatnot. What do you think is? I mean, the thing about narrative management is whoever's in control of it, whoever's the think tanks or the groups that are coming up with the plan of action of how we're going to brainwash the Americans, the American public. They're really clever, right? I mean, they get you to think that this particular person or whoever is on your side. And then they're leading you towards a different conclusion, a conclusion that they would rather you have. Maybe it's not the best conclusion, and they would prefer they prefer the whole thing to just go away. But this conclusion that they're going to lead us to is better than the real conclusion that they definitely don't want us to know about. I mean, it feels like that's what they're doing. It feels like they're trying to get us to think that there's all these people who are now suddenly on our side. And in reality, they're not.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair, and I think with an issue that's been this complicated for the current administration, we have been seeing, I think, unprecedented efforts at managing the narrative. I don't watch Steve Bannon, so I don't really know what his angles have been, but I do know that he has some interesting affiliations in the past. So of course there was that past effort to rehabilitate Epstein, but he was also a past business partner of Brock Pierce, who was at one time Epstein's cryptocurrency guru of sorts, and had previously been involved in a pedophile scandal of his own at the Digital Entertainment Network. So Steve Bannon has not had any problems in the past associating, at least for business purposes, with known pedophiles, basically. And he's it was a longtime Goldman Sachs guy, and then became the top strategist, for Trump in 2016 as sort of this populist upstart campaign. At least that was the public face of it. Of course, when Trump was actually in office, the last time, I don't think he governed like a populist. I think it was kind of much more similar to, a Bush era administration. But maybe, the public face of it, the PR, was obviously different. And I think that's kind of true now. But I think, it's very obvious that Trump is very sycophantic to Israeli interests, to the point that he obviously goes against a lot of his populist promises in order to favor or, put the knee down towards Israel. And there's a lot of reasons this could be, of course. But one thing that's unrelated to Epstein that I think also explains a lot of Trump's behavior, one of the key figures in the Netanyahu corruption trial is this Australian billionaire named James Packer. And James Packer just cozied up to Trump, buying a lot of property from him adjacent to Mar-a-Lago. And this is exactly what Packer did to Netanyahu and is sort of a focus of the trial. And Packer is known for not really being mentally well, and he tends to kind of have figures that act as handlers. And arguably the person that does that for Packer is this guy named Brett Ratner, who is now producing this documentary that's, going to cost a lot of money, I guess, or going to make them a lot of money on Melania Trump, that's supposed to air at the end of the year. He was previously basically exiled from Hollywood because of all the accusations around him during the Me Too era, and he basically fled to Israel or immigrated there, got handed an Israeli passport a week after being Netanyahu's guest of honor at a UN event. The other guest of honor was Alan Dershowitz, another circled name in Epstein's black book. And Brett Ratner is basically said, well, he does say that he is an adopted son of this guy named Alvin Malnick, or Al Malnick. And Malnick makes it very clear that, yes, Ratner is his adopted son, and they've been together for a long time. And Malnick was widely reported in the 70s and 80s to be the heir to Meyer Lansky in Miami, and that he basically came up with all these money laundering schemes in the Caribbean, and is basically, the new head of the Jewish mob after Meyer Lansky. So that's pretty telling, I would think, and it's amazing that there's been no scrutiny of that, really. Or of figures like Brett Ratner, who also has ties to the Diddy scandal, that is also being swept under the rug. And now Trump is probably going to pardon Diddy. I would argue, as I have in my reporting on that case too, there's a lot more overlap in these things than people would like to look at. But instead of talking about that, even in independent media, the narratives that are being spun are considerably different. And again, trying to keep people mostly in partisan boxes, or to focus on specific figures that are easy fallmen at this point, that they could make examples of or humiliate even. And there's also the added narrative management angle of Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, potential pardons being floated for her. Will she testify? She wants immunity and all of this stuff. But Ghislaine has made it very clear that she thinks her father was murdered, and that she thinks Epstein was murdered. And as she's currently in prison, I think and she's been trying to get out ever since she got in. And the Supreme Court might hear her case and might end up even declaring a mistrial at some point, depending on how that goes next year. I think it's pretty clear that Ghislaine would do or say anything to get out of prison and reduce her sentence. So who knows if we can really, find her testimony credible. But again, it's a narrative management thing. If she sits down and names the names that are convenient to a segment of a political base they want to rile up, she will do that.
They'll throw in one Republican, but it'll be an inconsequential one. That's how they'll do it. Everybody's inconsequential. That she'll start dropping names, but nobody will matter.
As I said before, the oligarchs are not, right? And the broader network is not, and they span both parties.
Yeah, no, but she'll just drop the names that they tell her to drop. They say, "Well, just give us a few, so that we can just shut everybody up and tell them, see, we did something." But I don't think the American people are actually buying it. I don't think that this narrative management, I would hope not. I don't think it's working. I actually don't think it's working. I think they're trying, and the more they try, the more suspicious everybody gets. And everyone's like, no, you guys are all in on it. We see that you're all in on it. And I think that more and more people are awake to the grip that this type of blackmail has on our country. But I think the players that they're not aware of are the ones that you talk a lot about, which are the behind the scenes, the oligarchs, the tech groups, not the political figures. A lot of us just focus on the political figures all the time.
Well, that's what they want.
Right.
That's why they're there.
Them. Yeah. Well, political figures can be replaced and new ones can come in that they can control.
I mean, they've been doing that. They do that constantly in US politics and also UK politics, and really anywhere all over the world. Something gets unpopular. There's a scandal. They pick who to sacrifice, but they're never the people actually deciding what happens.
Yeah.
And political power in the U.S., our political system is dominated, by special interests, extremely wealthy oligarch donors, and multinational corporations. And those don't represent the will of the people. It's true for both parties. I think it's pretty clear in the case of Trump, he's made it, he'll do whatever Israel says. I think, as you noted earlier, the evidence to that is there's many examples.
Yeah.
Even the current prime minister of Netanyahu relied on Epstein for banking, according to the JP Morgan USVI suit over Epstein that was settled out of court for several $1 million. And I would argue the reason JP Morgan paid that to make that go away is that they just didn't want to reveal the extent of their banking relationship with Epstein, which was pretty significant. Or also the fact that Jamie Dimon was basically put in charge of JP Morgan by, banking interest tied very closely to Wexner and also to the Crown family, who have historic ties to organized crime and are also part of the mega group. So again, this is something that is much bigger than just Epstein. I would encourage people to look into it for themselves. And, there's still so much work to be done on this case. And I think people also need to be really wise, as we've been talking about repeatedly, the efforts at narrative management. They are very extensive. Another good example of that is Leon Black, the head of Apollo Global Management. That's been sort of a focus in and out of the Epstein scandal at various times. And Leon Black wanted all of this to go away, and so he had Apollo Global Management, his firm, do a report on his ties to Epstein. And of course, they didn't find anything illegal or bad, really, But the person that wrote that for Apollo Global Management is this guy named Buzzy Krongard, or Alvin Krongard. And Krongard was like former deputy director of the CIA during 9/11. And he is one of the top suspects in 9/11 insider trading through his former bank, Alex Brown and Sons, which at that point was rolled into Deutsche Bank. So is that really would you trust that guy's opinion about Leon Black and Epstein? I'm a little skeptical, but this shows the lengths that people will go to try and make the association and the scrutiny go away.
Right.
And they have a lot of money. They can buy off a lot of people. In the era of social media today, where the algorithm, is all important, you can pay millions and have the algorithm favor you or favor a particular figure that's saying what you want, and get and drown out different viewpoints. So, again, people need to be really critical of the information that they're consuming. And again, do your own research. Don't just ask Grok or ChatGPT or whatever to do it for you, because you're outsourcing your thinking to big tech. And Epstein had so many ties to big tech, as we discussed. So maybe they're not the best arbiters of information, and you should continue to think for yourselves and not outsource it to an algorithm designed by people that might very well have been funded by Jeffrey Epstein.
Whitney, it's always great talking to you. It's also always, at the end of our conversations, I always walk away feeling like there's no hope.
No, don't feel that way.
A little bit, because
here's why you shouldn't.
It's like you're going, it's like the networks are so extensive. It's like, how do we break these up? I will tell you. Okay.
So much money has been put, for example, in the case of Israel, in preventing U.S. cities and states engaging in BDS, which is boycott, divest, and sanctions. Actually, the venture capitalist Paul Singer, who I think is one of these people funding the primaries of Massey, he created an organization with top people from a previous Netanyahu administration in Israel to basically have U.S. companies become dependent on Israeli startups as a way to prevent the U.S. from ever meaningfully boycotting them. But the people can boycott, and there's a reason so much money is being funneled into Congress to prevent boycotts, and also into state legislatures. It's because economic boycotts are powerful, and that's what they don't want. and us as a people are more dependent on them if we depend on them for all of our economic means. And now a lot of people in Epstein world have a lot of ties to stable coins and the digital dollar that are now about to come into view very soon after the passage of the Genius Act. And Brock Pierce, who I mentioned earlier, is the co-founder of Tether, the biggest stablecoin at the moment. And stable coins are programmable and surveillable in the same way CBDCs are. And so, the Trump administration could just turn your money off, right? Mm-hmm. If you're accused of anti-Semitism or whatever. They did it for Harvard, right? Why wouldn't they do it, for you, if it's just a flip of a switch at that point? And so people need to get really serious about economically extricating themselves from these networks. Yes, it is a very large network of, oligarchs and their flunkies, but they control our lives now, and we can take steps to not do that.
Right.
We can build different economic systems at the local level up. It's just up to us to do those things. But I think it's only dark and depressing and doom-pilled or whatever if we are just assuming that our only hope as a society and a people rests on these political figureheads that are repeatedly paraded in front of us.
Yeah.
Yes, in that case, they all suck. And so we're not going to solve any of these problems by putting all of our hopes on them. We have to do something ourselves.
Yeah.
And so people that are outraged about what's happening in Gaza, or outraged about the Epstein scandal, or any of these other things that are going on, need to figure out, what am I going to do so I don't keep feeding these systems with my money and my time and my energy? And the more you think about that and get with like-minded people that also think like that, the more that can be done.
Okay. Well, Whitney, thank you so much for being here and giving us all of your insight and talking about everything, including this, the accusations, and but mostly thank you for all of this information about Trump and Clinton's, Epstein, just so much that's there. I wish you would just, clearly you've just stolen all of this work, obviously. I mean, here you are, you got like so much information in your brain. Like, how could anybody ever think that you, like, this wasn't your own research? There's no way. This is so much.
People say all sorts of stuff online. I don't even want to get into all the crazy stuff people tweet at me accusing me of. It's insane. But anytime you're like a public figure in any capacity,
you're gonna get it.
Reach a certain threshold of Twitter followers, there's going to be some guy claiming that you're from outer space or whatever. So,
well, I'm like apparently a Chinese, I'm not even Chinese, but I'm like, somehow sometimes people accuse me of being like some sort of a Chinese, like spy or something here in the United States. So, okay, whatever. Whitney, thank you again for being here. So Unlimited Hangout, that is where people can go to read your work. Right. And
yep. Mm-hmm.
What else do we have here? I think we have the link to your book below, and also to Unlimited Hangout and to your X account. Is there anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. You can also follow us on Telegram, but there's a lot in the pipeline for Unlimited Hangout. We're due to launch a print magazine later this year, get away a little bit from algorithm world and lean a little bit into slow content. The idea being like fast food, slow food, if people are familiar with that. Everything online is pretty much fast content. Unlimited Hangout specializes in long form content that is not written by AI in any capacity. So if you, would like to support that, we'll have more information about that coming soon. So you can learn about that by following me on former Twitter or Telegram or our newsletter, or which is probably better than all of those things because it's straight to the source.
Right. Do you guys have a Kindle version?
I think there is a Kindle version. I mean, it's sold on Amazon like pretty much all books are, but I would encourage people to buy directly from the publisher Trine Day if you don't want to give Jeff Bezos any money.
Right.
But there's an audiobook and an ebook version
of your book. But I'm talking about Unlimited Hangout. Like when you come out with articles, I wish that they were on like, on an e-reader.
Oh, well, we'll look into that. Yeah. We're hoping to redesign the website a little bit to make it more readable on mobile and other things. So I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, just something to think about because they are long and they are intense, and it's like I want to read them
They
like I
are
read a
long.
book. Right.
Hmm.
All right, Whitney. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks, Kim.
CB Distillery's VIP sale is on, and for a few days only, you can save up to 50% on everything with code RUMBLE. So if better sleep, less stress, and pain relief after exercise sound good to you, well, then you need to hear about CBD from CB Distillery. They have plant-based solutions for just about everything: sleep, stress, mood and focus, even pain after exercise, all made with high-quality, clean ingredients. They even have CBD for pets. And many of you are already feeling the difference, especially with their sleep products. I get emails from you all the time. Personally, my favorite product is called which is for rest and relaxation after a long and stressful day talking about all of the crazy things going on in the world. But look, if you're still tossing and turning at night or you're struggling with another health concern, then make the change to CB Distillery. And now's your chance to save big with code RUMBLE. But the deal won't last long, so don't wait. Visit cbdistillery.com, enter code RUMBLE, and save 50% on everything. That's cbdistillery.com, code RUMBLE, cbdistillery.com. Not available in Idaho, Iowa, and South Dakota. Well, all right, guys, that is it for tonight's show. Thank you so much for joining us. What a wealth of information coming from Whitney, as usual. Again, the links are down below if you want to connect with her work and read it. Sometimes it's easier, I find it is easier to read her work because I can slow down and I can reread it over and over and over again until my brain comprehends it. But she's just a fantastic researcher and writer. So those links are down below. Those of you who are not familiar with her, hopefully you saw just how brilliant she is as a researcher and how much information she has. All right, guys, we'll be back tomorrow with another great one, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Have a great one. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.